Welcome to Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow. Each week we bring you insights from the playmakers, deal makers, and rule makers in the world of sports. I'll give you my take on some of the items of the week using my 30 years of experience doing deals for teams, leagues, and players in the $750 billion business of sports. Plus, we'll talk with a central figure in the sports world. The views expressed in this podcast are my own and do not represent the views of Reuters. Let's get started. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, and we're keeping score. Let's get right to it. One of the biggest weeks in sports and deal making 3-1. Number 3, Joe Tsai pays Mikhail Prokhorov about $2.35 billion for the Nets, a record for a U.S. pro sports franchise, and nearly $1 billion for the Barclays Center in a separate transaction. The deal expected to be approved by the NBA Board of Governors at the end of September and puts Tsai in full control of the team by the time the Nets head to China to play games against the Lakers in October. Great timing. He keeps control of the deal, and the NYCB Live's Nassau Coliseum, Prokhorov keeps. They'll keep a partnership together, may combine staffs. The proposed $1.5 billion commercial entertainment residential development plan at Nassau and Barclays may not combine, but certainly have some staff people working on both. They seem to be getting along really well. Tsai, by the way, a Taiwanese-Canadian businessman, the co-founder and executive vice chairman of Alibaba. He's also an international lacrosse enthusiast, having founded the San Diego Gulls of the National Lacrosse League, increasing the value of franchises there, and with the value of the Nets and Barclays Center at an unprecedented high, increases the value of sports franchises all across the spectrum. That's number 3. Number 2, golf, PGA, LPGA, the attraction of corporate sponsors. Well, as we head into the final major event of the golf season before the President's Cup anyway, the FedEx Cup in Atlanta, BMW renews its sponsorship, basically $15 to $18 million a year, to extend the BMW Championship sponsorship beyond 2019. They extend USA Swimming, they extend bobsled and skeleton, 2020, 2022. Most important, the golf piece maintains continuity. This is the semifinal event. It was there in Chicago. It was rainy. It is Chicago. It is the summer, but the crowds were off the chart, and can't wait for the new format, the FedEx Cup Final in Atlanta, starting end of the week. At the same time, Gamebridge, which is a Group 1001 company, the LPGA and others, announced the LPGA Tour coming to Boca Raton. It's called the Gamebridge LPGA at Boca Rio, January 20 to 26 in South Florida. International event because the LPGA kicks off its season with the Diamonds Resorts Tournament in Orlando, January 15 through 19, the same week as the NFL Pro Bowl. Then everybody goes down to Boca Raton for the event in South Florida, coordinated with and part of the festivities to bring economic impact to South Florida. Dan Towers, the Group 1001 CEO, talks about the platform to provide the sports bests forum to compete for a $2 million purse, but yet Super Bowl 54 going to South Florida. Great synergies about that same time. Internationally, the eyes of the world pointed to Central and South Florida at the end of next January. And that's number 2. Finally, number 1, the completion of the $315 million renovation has transformed the 96-year-old Los Angeles Coliseum from ravaged to ravishing 70,000 seats, down from 92,000, but new video boards, 600 TV screens, 21 of 22 seat suites at the Coliseum have been sold at prices that range from $7.5 to $10 million with 20-year commitments. The renovated building will be much more desirable for Trojans fans for years to come. Rams fans, final season before the new Los Angeles Stadium at Hollywood Park opens next year, and that's number 1. Speaking of number 1, American Airlines pays $90 million over 10 years to sponsor a plaza at the Rams and Chargers' new Inglewood Stadium we just talked about. The plaza stands 10 stories high, capacity of about 15,000. They've agreed to sponsor a 2.5-acre space that serves as the main entrance to the new $5 billion stadium. $90 million over 10 years, and that's not even the core naming deal. Clearly, everybody excited about the new stadium in L.A., not just the Coliseum renovation, but the Rams and Chargers' new deal, Super Bowls, Final Fours, concerts, and a new incredible area in the southern part of the L.A. area that becomes a new shining star for the L.A., following Dallas, Indianapolis, Minnesota, now Vegas, and this. Really timely to have Russ Simons, who heads the Venue Solutions Group, which is coordinating all of the professional services and helping the Rams and Chargers get the building done. Spent 35 years in the industry, known Russ for a long time. He's an old dude and a good dude. He's going to kill me for that. Started with Populous, the architectural firm, LMI, and others. His clients have included the Padres, University of Oklahoma, the Steelers, and otherwise knows everything there is to know about building and designing the new stadium in L.A. Here he is, Russ Simons. Sports professor Rick Horrow, Beyond the Scoreboard, inside the boardroom. $1.3 trillion business, and 70 to 80 of the leases in the big groups of sports teams and leagues are coming up for renewal in the next 3 or 4 years. The 20-year financing about to run out. Everybody talking about public-private partnership, venue management, efficiency, how you build, how to remodel. And as Russ Simons knows, those are the houses from which everything else emanates. One of the scholars in the business, lofty scholars in the business, started in the architectural side with Populous, and now he has his own firm. Will explain that. And the title is Chief Listening Officer?
Yes.
You got to explain that too.
Chief Listening Officer.
Talk about the company first.
So our company's Venue Solutions Group. We spun off from Populous. I used to run a group for Populous called the Facility Operations Evaluation and Analysis Group. I'm not an architect. Some of my best friends are architects, and I love working with them. But we tried to provide a conscience that beyond the actual form of the building, that it has to not only look nice but function flawlessly. We spun off about 9 years ago and have a great relationship with all architecture and design firms. We basically help people understand how buildings work. We try to provide the science of facility management so they can make the best decisions. It's not the same decision. It's not one size fits all. It's what's the science behind what's best for that particular client.
It's a very competitive business, Russ, and you earned your chops because you've been at it for a long time. We've been at it together in different perspectives. Yeah. But I think people understand that it's more of a creative endeavor than ever before. It's not just an architectural cookie cutter. It's not one size fits all, but there's so many intricate issues right now. Agree?
Well, it's not, if we were just talking about sports entertainment facilities, that statement would be correct. But the current trend of taking the sports and entertainment facility as a lightning rod for development, for ancillary revenue streams, to create live, work, play environments, which now is a component of every new major project going forward, not the least of which would be the Warriors project with 2 office towers, major plaza, all of that taking place in San Francisco, or the project I'm currently involved with, which is the Los Angeles Stadium and Entertainment District, which is 300 acres of property, a 70,000 seat stadium, a 6,000 seat performance venue, 510,000 square feet of retail, mixed use retail, live, work, play. All of these things now are just increasing the complexity of something that in and of itself was a pretty robust business standing alone.
You made a comment which was interesting before, that this is not just about sports, but we're talking about healthcare, hospitals, facilities that have been 365, 24/7, and companies like the JLL discussion we've had, where commercial development and commercial expertise is almost more important today than stadium expertise.
Well, as you and I know, going back many, many years, the business of public assembly facilities and sports and entertainment facilities in particular, it was kind of a good old boy network, and you did what the person before you did, and you aspired to do what the person ahead of you did. But in an honest conversation, there wasn't a lot of science. And so what we have now is a situation where we can no no longer managed by gut. We can't afford to be, it's what we feel. We actually have to know and have information and data with which to make those decisions. So while the sports and entertainment business itself is sort of growing into trying on that sort of new coat, businesses like hospitals, airports, and hotels have been really manufacturing the science of how to operate for a very, very long time. And so that's where our company, and we pride ourselves on providing the science of facility management, but we really look towards those other industries for leadership, including organizations like IFMA and BOMA, which are commercial real estate and management organizations, rather than look to public assembly facilities for leadership.
And so the interesting part about that too is that the whole LA project that you proudly described, and you should, is it's Anschutz primarily driven, but the Spanos family involved with the Chargers. Kroenke, sorry. Yeah, the Kroenke folks, absolutely. Certainly not Anschutz. I'm one facility behind, by the way. That used to be LA Live in the facility down the Farmers Field. There is no such thing.
Right.
So the Kroenke Spanos process clearly is one of those situations where it looks almost like you're planning a mixed-use entertainment, public sector, healthcare, hospital, government, but all of the disciplines required beyond just sports to put it together.
A city within a city. Yeah. Absolutely the right description.
So how much of that, Russ, applies to the world in the future? How much of that is the way sports and entertainment and public infrastructure facilities will be developed process-wise as we go forward?
So from an evolution standpoint in sports, as data started to become important in the discussion, there was plenty of old school people that said, you know what, I don't want to embrace any of that. I'm just going to do what I did. And now we're transitioning where on almost every panel we have here at ALSD, data's leading the conversation. And for instance, in the panel I just did, when I tried to steer it away from data back to some more of the operating decisions, it ends up coming back to data. So I would say that it's the new normal. I don't know that we 100% know what to do with it yet. We have more data points than we do analysis. So we're still sort of learning about, it's like learning how to read, I think. We have this book and there's a whole lot of words in it, so now we've got to sort out which of those words can help us in making the right decisions in terms of how we manage.
Does Venue Solutions Group long-term evolve into a kind of must-hire company that creates minimum standards for process?
So process, and I'm delighted that you used that word because we are a process company. And while I would love for us to be the must-hire group, I mean, I think there are a lot of people in a lot of parts of the business that are important to have included. We see ourselves as team players. We see our best position to be on behalf of the owner because we're sort of neutral with all of the different specialty consultants and designers. And what we don't do is tell somebody what to do. Yeah. What we try to do is provide the information that an owner or a manager or an operator team would need to make the best decision for their organization. And when you realize that we could both be talking about Major League Baseball, but the difference between, let's say, the Baltimore Orioles and the Washington Nationals, which you can easily drive to see a game in one and see in the other, their operating profile, their culture, their resources are different, that you can't just say one thing works for everybody. So you've got to create the science and give the opportunity for people to make the best decisions for their enterprise or organization.
Best practices, seismic shift in how facilities are perceived. AT&T Stadium begets Indy, begets Minnesota. Now you have Oakland, over $1 billion as well in Vegas. And you obviously have yours that you should be tremendously proud of. Some people talk about $5 billion as if it's an albatross. Most people ought to think of it as a new way to build infrastructure with a major catalyst in the middle of it. So what say you about all that?
Well, first of all, I don't know that we've ever announced a number ever to anybody, and so it's interesting for me to watch the media about the speculation
and not
of
say
what's
anything,
what.
right.
Yeah, but so I have no comment about that. But you're right. Our business has always been evolutionary, and we learned from the things before. But the difference is that we are evolving from a stadium to a stadium to a stadium. Now we're evolving from a stadium to, let's say, an arena to LA Live, or to KC Live, or the Cordish work done in Baltimore and the Inner Harbor, and now that's been expanded to incorporate true live, work, play, a significant number of residences and retail and thematic lifestyle centers, which include gyms and movie theaters and all of those things. So that city within a city moniker is actually true. So now it's not just about running a sports facility or even a couple of resources or assets in that environment, but also property management. And so now that's where we have to come back out in an environment with companies like JLL and other people like them to say, hey, bring that expertise that you've been doing on the commercial side, and we've got to embrace that on the sports side. The sports side always felt like we were special because we work with the stars and the players and all of that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we didn't have the greatest information. And so now we've got to sort of take a little bit of humble pie and go out and say, hey, we need help from these other resources to make sure that we're maximizing the opportunities.
You know why we have great information in the industry today? Because of people like Russ Simons. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Speak with you soon.
Cheers.
We'll be hearing a lot from Russ before the end of the year, trust me, but it's really important to get that on the table as the NFL season opens, but as the new naming deals are cut left and right. Let's talk about tech, the Sports Tech Minute. Back to school time, and Monumental and EverFi supporting STEM all across in North America and the world. Students across the nation returning to the classroom. Monumental Sports and Entertainment founder and chairman Ted Leonsis spearheading a multi-pronged effort to improve schools and fuel economic growth in the impoverished neighborhoods around his arena and Ward 8. According to the Washington Times, the initiative called Forward 8 includes pushing for the expansion of advanced science, technology, engineering, and mathematics programs in D.C. schools. Monumental's Beltway neighbor, education technology leader EverFi, likewise proactive in community engagement, empowering more teachers, citizens, and students to get involved with game-based, incentive-driven online education that fosters greater comprehension, retention, and behavior change. And by bringing together the public and private sectors to change the way education is delivered, EverFi equipping today's learners across the nation with the skills they need to become tomorrow's leaders, while Monumental is leading the way toward helping improve education, the workforce of tomorrow, and the community in their own backyard. Clearly, not just tech, but powerful sports as well. So it's power as well as technology, Monumental and EverFi together. Finally, let's talk about power of sports through tech as well. Another example of the NFL doing some data as well as charity. And the bottom line is they continue to do it with some major national and international development. For example, they strike a deal with Sports Radar to expand their existing partnership, licensing the distribution of NFL league data and content to more fans around the world. The renewal significantly expands and extends the existing partnership, providing more money for philanthropy and otherwise, but also exclusive distribution of real-time official play-by-play data and NGS data to sports betting operators in the U.S. and internationally where sports betting is legal and regulated. Official licensed data will improve the speed and accuracy of NFL data, and they'll use Sport Radar's integrity services to monitor betting across all NFL games, preseason, regular, and postseason. The NFL and its clubs will have access to Sports Radar's integrity education workshops and products to ensure the continuation of the NFL's high standard for integrity. Why is this a Power of Sports Minute? Because the more the integrity issues are resolved, the more the gambling dollars should increase because of the significant market expansion and the more money available for charity, philanthropy, and the like. It's already up 12% year over year. It will continue to grow. Well, that's our show for this week. We would certainly like to thank Russ Simons for participating. We'd like to thank our folks on the ground for helping to put this together, and like to thank you guys for listening and watching. And join us next week when we continue to keep score.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Keeping Score. Assistance provided by Carlos Swadek, Tanner Simpkins, Reuters Digital. I'm Rick Horrow. Thanks again for listening. See you next time on Keeping Score.